Godzilla is king of the monsters, but he isn't exactly king of the cinemas. A Japanese character by origin, Godzilla represented a force of nature, which always targeted Japan because filming in other countries is quite expensive. When he wasn't fighting giant space chickens, he would often battle some kind of toxic creature or man-made machine that was upsetting the balance of things. All this sounds pretty insane, so it's hard to imagine Godzilla resonating with American audiences. He is a character of his culture, and most of the films arrived at English-speaking regions with horrible dubs that didn't do the ridiculous plots any favors. A lot of Godzilla's movies are considered children's films by the Japanese, which makes sense given the plots involving ape men from Planet X. Though it can't be argued that as they went on, many of them contained content that was not suitable for most kids. This has led to a growing adult fan base who are only slightly cooler than bronies. These avid kaiju fans have helped usher Godzilla into the pop culture pantheon and make him into a movie monster icon that is recognizable to those who haven't even seen one of his films. Number 1. History doesn't repeat itself. Godzilla first appeared 60 years ago in 1954 with a self-titled film. At the time, the film wasn't well received, but no one knew what to think of guys in rubber suits throwing each other around. Since then, Godzilla has had 3 different eras of films spanning his 6-decade trek across movie history. Some are silly, some are self-serious, but all are campy, and even the good ones contain unintentionally hilarious parts. All said and done, there are 28 Japanese films total, produced from 1954 to 2004, topping off Godzilla's 50th anniversary with the film Final Wars, a movie made by someone who watched The Matrix and thought it would be cooler if it was lower budget and had Godzilla in it. TriStar Pictures and Sony had the rights to Godzilla in the 80s and were releasing the films on VHS and airing them on cable. After releasing crappy dubs for a few years, they decided to produce their own film. This proved more difficult than they thought, and after several pitches being turned down due to budget concerns, Roland Emmerich was hired. In one weekend, he pounded out a screenplay with producer Dean Devlin. The resulting film was so horrible that Toho instantly distanced themselves from it. Despite approving of the redesign, Toho took its anger out on the film by having their version of Godzilla kill the American version of Godzilla several times in multiple movies. But Toho weren't the only ones who hated Zilla. Godzilla fans were offended, critics thought the movie was dumb, and audiences weren't impressed either. This is what happens when someone makes a movie without ever looking at the source material. And this was sadly the biggest Godzilla movie ever made, making it the one that most people have probably seen. Number 2, you don't have to be a fan. Now I may have some Godzilla knowledge, which is mostly thanks to Wikipedia, but I'm rather uninitiated. I know there's a giant moth called Mothra, and unfortunately I remember Godzuki, but the real Godzilla fanatic in our midst is Micro Bunny. I, on the other hand, went in with minor expectations. This is because the director was someone I never heard of, the screenwriter had no prior work, and the trailers are pretty shy about showing Godzilla. So imagine my surprise when the film ditched the ape man and actually took itself seriously. The director takes the franchise in an interesting direction that is open to non-fans like myself, but has plenty of things for observant Micro Bunnies. One thing I liked was we see much of the monster action through the perspective of the human characters. Many of the big action set pieces take place on TV screens, with onlookers in the foreground, or in the background while the military desperately tries to control the situation. It reminded me of Cloverfield, only good. Unlike that movie, there was actual cinematography involved. That is to say, there was actual shot composition instead of a drunk person swinging the camera around. Anyway, the suspense in Godzilla is excruciating at times, and while it takes Godzilla quite a while to show up, his reveal is one of the most epic I've ever seen. They keep his screen time limited, which makes his appearances more impactful, a stark contrast to the 45-minute space monster smackdowns from the older films. The Mutos are neat-looking monsters despite the dumb name, and while they have no ties to previous Godzilla films, they are a mixture of various kaiju from his history. The origin story is oddly detailed and makes this ridiculous concept sound viable. While the monsters do fight and destroy cities, they aren't interested in destroying mankind. They have actual goals, which makes them feel more like characters and less like action figures. Godzilla is shown as a hero, but not in the traditional way. He's not helping humans solve mysteries like Scooby-Doo, but he isn't trying to kill them either. As Ken Watanabe's character says, he's there to restore balance. Number 3, we are ants. The way they play with scope in this film does wonders to make you feel insignificant. Several shots make you feel like an ant watching a battle of titans. Now you humans know how we bunnies feel. Speaking of ants, let's briefly discuss the boring characters, I mean the humans. If you're expecting lots of Walter White, you'll be quite disappointed. He isn't the main character, but the film dances around the idea of even having one. Most films follow one character through the story, where this one switches between several, making it hard to pinpoint whose story it really is. Godzilla is the glue that holds the movie together and makes the film cohesive. It was much different and preferable to worm scientist Matthew Broderick and a supporting cast of annoying reporters plus one out-of-place French dude running around making bad jokes. That was the major problem with the first American outing. It didn't take itself seriously. Then again, watching any of the old films, it'd be hard to imagine a serious Godzilla. But at least in the old films, Godzilla was formidable. When he isn't ripping off Jurassic Park or chasing around comic relief characters, he's getting killed by missiles. Seriously, missiles. This new Godzilla treats missiles like a mosquito bite. This makes the military so desperate they destroy the Golden Gate Bridge trying to stop him. I gotta say, it was quite cathartic to see San Francisco getting punished for being a hive of hipster scum and villainy. Number 4, what are you hiding from us? Well, the good easily outweighs the bad. You can't say there isn't any. First of all, Aaron Johnson's character isn't very engaging. He spends half the movie with a blank expression on his face like his brain stopped working halfway through a thought. His wife, played by Elizabeth Olsen, looks at a 500-foot tall giant dinosaur with no sense of awe. Girls are so hard to impress these days. Kids usually suck in movies, but thankfully they don't show much of them. I've heard criticisms towards Cranston for overacting. My criticisms are actually towards Admiral Stenz for underacting. I almost felt like I was watching a Transformers movie when he was on screen. Speaking of Transformers, I've heard people complain about Godzilla's screen time. As I mentioned before, his older films had overindulgent hour-long rubber suit wrestling matches. Are we so ADD now that we can't handle the screen not being filled with fire and robots peeing on people every 5 seconds? The more you have of something, the less special it becomes. A carrot once a week tastes much sweeter than a carrot every day. Godzilla uses suspense to make his screen time more powerful. The prequel Star Wars films might have 18 dudes on screen at once slicing things with lightsabers, but with no one Jedi to focus on, the incomprehensible mess becomes visual white noise. Do you know that some people compare Jar Jar Binks to a rabbit? Do you know how insulting that is? Sorry, got off topic there. So, the verdict. On a scale of yeesh, niche, or nosh, it lands a radioactive dinosaur-sized yeesh. I really enjoyed this movie. Hearing people gleefully cheering and clapping during the film's epic moments just highlighted for me that this is a movie anyone can enjoy, fan or not. But what do I know? I'm just a rabbit. This is Review Rabbit, reminding you that the arrogance of men is thinking that bunnies are in their control and not the other way around.
Let them fight.
You want carrots. You need carrots. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and the great Micro Bunny will give you carrots.